Hello everybody, so today we're going to be reading Abyssal Attractions, Yandere Creature X Listener up in here. So we are currently in chapter 24, but we're going to go back a chapter for the purpose of the recap. So for this recap, basically, long story short, Hulan got in a fight with another one of his species. Hulan was some type of, like, very scary creature. The other one was a very monster lizard type of thing. Just on all fours. They ended up fighting, I believe, almost to death, but both of them didn't end up quite dying. After the battle, Hulan kind of was a giant monster at the time. He passed out, bleeding everywhere from the wounds. We woke him up as much as we could, but, finally we were able to wake him up, make him shrink down as his bones were, like, literally out showing. It's scary. And, he ended up slipping into our brain, pretty much. Like, slipping into our ear and into our brain, because we asked him, like, hey, you can heal up in there, you'll be fine, etc., etc., etc. Like, basically healing off our body energy. So, in the very end, it was like, you thought you would see Hulan in, like, a day or two, but no. That was 4 days ago. So, yeah, we haven't seen Hulan or have even heard of him, or, like, he barely ever existed for 4 days. Insane. Anyway, that's pretty much the end of the recap. That's what basically happened, guys. So now we're officially getting into these warnings. So in these warnings, in this story, there will be mentions of kidnapping, army related things. There's going to be a lot of embarrassing-ish scenes here too, so I'm just going to add that here. A lot of violence, potential death. There will be a smexy-ish scene, kind of-ish. I'm going to measure it just in case. And if I have any other warnings that I forgot to warn you guys about vocally, they will be on the screen right now. You guys have been warned. Chapter 24. In the Darkness of the Storm. You opened your eyes on the 5th day of Hulan's absence. The 5th day since the battle that caused him such serious injuries. The 5th day since you had no company but the waves on the beach. You opened your eyes slowly, looking up into the bright blue cloudless sky. You did not move for a bit, laying there staring blankly into the sky and doing nothing but breathing. Not even thinking, just breathing. You watched the seagulls flying up high overhead, like fish swimming in the ocean. In a way, the sky was an abyss too, just a lighter one. Starting light and getting darker as it got deeper, like the ocean. Except, excuse me, only this was an endless abyss. The ocean's abyss had an end and one point or another. My English. The sky abyss just kept going and going and going, getting colder and colder and darker, just like the ocean, but never having a bottom. What creatures laid in that abyss when creatures like what you have seen were in the abyss of your very own planet? After a minute of despair, you finally sat up and looked across the waves, spending another few minutes staring out to the ocean, watching the waves lap over each other. Being glad you were not on the far beach where the battle had taken place. The bloody water was probably gone, but the sand was probably still red. You blinked a slow blink that matched the pace of everything else in your body and slowly started to stand up, feeling your muscles stretch and joints pop as you did so. Even without Hulan, you were able to find plenty of food to feed yourself, as there were exotic fruit trees everywhere. Water was a little harder, as sometimes your fire would go out and you would not get it back for a little bit. Thus, you could not boil it. In those cases, coconut water sufficed for a small period until you got your fire going again. Oh, that's kind of interesting. Physically, you were doing okay as well. Your leg, for the most part, stopped being a pain and was mostly working now. Your mental state, on the other hand, was not so well. Hulin gave no sign in these 5 days that he was still there, or even still alive for that matter. It was driving you crazy, being isolated on this island. You were going to give it one more day before you started making some signal fires. You had thought about doing them since the first day, but something about waiting for Hulin stopped you. In fact, since the moment he captured you, you had wanted nothing more than to escape his grasp. There was something in the air, though, something that made you hold on for just a little bit longer. After you had seen that he had healed your cut, your feelings changed a little bit. There were still things you would never forgive him for. But something about him healing your minuscule little cut when he himself was practically in a fatal state. Something about when he was dying, yet he still put you first, even if it was not threatening in the slightest. Something in that act made you hold out for him. You decided that by tomorrow, if he had not given you a sign, that he would light signal fires. You made your way over to the fire that was a little more than embers now, but with a little work, you were able to get it going again. Excuse me. You walked over to start to the start of the tree line to grab more kindling and firewood. Then, making a small tent out of kindling and putting some dry grass in the embers, you got on your hands and knees and blew into the fire. The heat on your face was a little intense, but it was not unbearable. You took another deep breath and huffed into the coals, watching as they pulsed bright orange and red with new life. Orange tongues of flame slowly engulfed the dry grass and kindling, creating a small little fire. Once it was going at a reasonable pace, you picked up small sticks to let it grow, being careful not to set the sticks directly on the flame, as you did not want to smother it. As the fire grew, so did the warmth, with a good homely crackling sound. You gave a smile, but it did not reach your eyes. Now it was time to find yourself some breakfast. A wave of mental depression just made you want to sit there and enjoy the warmth of the fire. You shook those feelings away and got up anyway with a little reluctance. Hulin needed as much energy as you could give him. Also, if he was consciously taking energy, then you knew he would only take the energy that you did not really use. So if he was conscious, then you really needed to provide all you could for him. On your way back into the tree line, you walked past the lifeless corpse of the Hawaiian guy that Hulin had been using as a host. With great surprise, you noticed that he did not look decayed in the slightest. You knew Hulin had a way of sustaining bodies, so he could keep them longer. However, his venom, or whatever he was using, was different in some people than most. Like how one of his venoms reacted more violently than he intended to do with you. Whatever he used to keep the bodies fresh worked differently in individual people. With Hubert, it lasted quite a while. With the big bearded guy, it did not last long at all. With this body, it looked like it was doing a good job, especially when Hulin was gone for such a long time. Especially with Hulin being gone for such a long time. It was still sad to you, though, seeing the lifeless body of a person just laying there. Maybe he was a bad man and deserved what came to him. Or maybe he was a good man, who worked very hard every day to provide for a wife and kids. It was best just to think of it as the former, or even better, just not think about it at all. So you set your gaze forward and walked to where you knew some fruit trees were. It was only about a 5-minute walk to the nearest mango tree, and there was already a little path forming in the ankle-high grass. Approaching the mango tree, you smiled again as you saw the sweet, ripe fruits dangling from their stems. The trees themselves were not that tall, so you were easily able to collect a few. cradling them in your arms as you made your way back to the campfire, already having some extra coconuts from the previous day's gathering. So you were set on some water. Exiting the tree line, your eyes widened in shock as the previous cloudless blue sky was now covered in dark gray clouds that were getting darker by the minute. A thick wind was making its way to you from the sea and on the horizon. You saw an angry mass of storm clouds with flashes of lightning here and there. The wind was fast and cold, whipping your hair around and chilling you to the bone. With this wind, the storm would be upon you in about 10 minutes, maybe 15. This storm crept on you within a matter of 15 minutes, and it looked like an absolutely nasty one, too. What on earth were you going to do? You were wishing even more that Hulin was there now. And even though you tried it before with no avail, you tried talking to him again. Hulin, please, I need you, you cried into the air, but as usual, there was no response. You took one last look at the tropical storm hurtling towards you and ran back into the forest. The trees were already swaying madly and groaning with displeasure. You were freezing now. The wind was blowing right through your body. You raised your hands and started rubbing your arms as you sped through the trees. Every second the sky got darker and it got harder and harder to see. Before it got too dark, you found a nice big tree that looked deep rooted and had a thick company above your head. You ran under the tree and curled yourself underneath, hugging your limbs close to yourself and breathing heavily into your hands. If the wind made you this cold, what on earth were you going to do when the rain itself arrived? Right as that thought came into your mind, you started to hear the pitter-patter of raindrops on the leaves above your head as you felt the ice-cold drops start hitting your skin. The wind was so loud now that you could barely hear yourself think. It howled and shrieked through the island, throwing sticks, sand, dirt, water, and even loose shrubbery around everywhere. Now that the storm was upon you, it was so dark you could barely see the outline of everything. Well, at least you would be able to if you could see through the water drenching you and blurring your sight. You shivered and wrapped yourself in one arm. That is insane. While the other clamped onto the tree behind you. The wind was so strong now you were almost certain if you let it go, it would find a way to fling you out to the ocean, where you once again the abyss would have you, though this time it would absolutely be permanent. Bright flashes of lightning split the darkness, and it was so close that you heard the electricity crackling through the air. The thunder boomed with the loudest, most deafening sound you have ever heard. The thunder shook the ground and you lost the hold on the tree for a split second. You were able to quickly grab back onto the wet wood, although it was even more concerning of how drenched it was. You hoped you could hold on. Through the force of the wind, though, and the lightning and thunder, you were able to shift around so you were facing the tree, gripping the tree with both of your hands instead of just one. Hulin! Remember. My throat is very bad right now. So sorry. Hulin! You yelled as loud as you could into the storm, but the wind swept it away before it could even reach your own ears. You laid your head against the hard, wet bark, closing your eyes and holding on with all your might as the wind tried its hardest to rip you away from your only means of protection. The cold only made it worse as you sapped your strength and weakened your hold on the tree. You were no doubt crying at this point, but there was no way to tell for sure. There was a sound like your ear canal draining of water in your left ear before it washed away in a split second. A warm, blood-like thing ran down your neck before catching your shirt, getting heavier and bigger with each second. Hulin! You cried again, opening your eyes. Although, just like last time, the storm swept the sound of your voice away in its whirlwind. Joy filled you as you realized it was your beast, but the storm would not let you enjoy the feeling because it was trying to rip you from the tree. Big, thick arms that ended in sharp talons reached around you and brought you back into the chest of your creature, while his claws hooked into the wood, securing you both to the tree. His head rested on yours and soft tentacles wrapped through your hair reassuringly. You hunched yourself even more into his hold, grabbing onto one of his arms instead of now the tree. closing your eyes, letting it protect you as the wind howled even louder, angry that it could not have you. Wow. That's crazy. We are in chapter 25, and they only knew each other. This is from the author. Alrighty, I've had multiple people ask me if Blue Eyes is the same creature as the crab and the curious thing that found you. The answer, yes. Blue Eyes is the little crab buddy. Though that's all I'm going to say for now. The rest will be revealed later. And I'm just going to skip down a little bit. Oh, just a quick warning. It gets heated in this chapter, but not too bad. There will be a warning, though. I will warn you guys way beforehand. Trust me. You were dreaming again. You did not know it was a dream at the time. You were in the abyss again, which was weird because you had not had a dream about the abyss since you were taken to the beach. This was a different type of dream, though. Unlike your usual dreams, where you floated around in the darkness until a monster got you, you were in a submarine. The submarine was broken, sunk into the bottom of the ocean. The water outside was absolutely pitch black. Your only life source was a small, weak light somewhere else in the ship. It only let you see the space you were at and a window that was always by you, letting you see the dark water outside. Your job was to fix this broken down submarine, and you only had your weak light to go by. In the dream, you were able to get the submarine going again. It would rise in the dark water. It would swim a good length up before it would break down again and tumble back to the sea floor. You clenched your teeth and scrunched your eyes shut tight, waiting for the moment that the submarine would hit the bottom and the force of the crash would make the ship implode from all the pressure. There was some relief when the ship did not explode or implode, hitting the rocks with a deep groan and rocking the people around inside the hole. It continued on like this. You would fix the ship, and it would rise for a little bit before breaking down again and rolling back to the bottom with a crash. Every time bringing you the fear that it was going to be the last time. This was going to be the time that the hole would not hold anymore. It was going to be this time that the ship imploded, letting the obsidian black water pouring in, letting the abyss in. You didn't know what happened. All you remembered was the huge tropical storm that arrived swifter than you could blink your eye. You remembered the storm almost claiming you, and that Hulin had returned. He came out and shielded you from the storm. After that, it was a bit murky. You blacked out from something. Did a tree snap and hit you too? Was it just the stress of all that happening at once? All you knew was that things were better now because Hulin was back. It took you a moment to register in your mind that Hulin had been gone for a little under 6 days, and that before he disappeared, he looked to be fatally wounded. Remembering this, your eyes flung open and you shot up from your laying position on the sand. You were once again on your mat under the sharp tart Hulin had made for you, what seemed to be like a lifetime ago. The sun was about to set and was painting the sky a beautiful purple and orange, leaving the ocean water a dark blue. Looking around, you saw that the fire was crackling with fresh logs and a seagull roasting on a spit above it. You must have learned it from the Hawaiian man's memories. Even though this was all there was no sign of Hulin himself. You rose up from your mat and slowly started walking over to the fire. The gentle breeze that was in the air wafted the smoke in your direction, and it smelled of the cooking seagull, which made your stomach growl. It was oddly comforting, though. The smell of a morning fire along with the sea breeze. The heat the fire gave off, mixing in with the warmth from the sun, made you feel as if you would never be cold again. You stepped around the fire while looking around the beach for any hint of Hulin. He was nowhere in sight. Was he in the ocean, the jungle, or in some cruel joke that had you imagine his return and he was just really dead? Had all you done all this yourself while you were blacked out? Hulin? You shouted into the air, hoping that if he was there, wherever he was, he would hear you and come back. You waited for several minutes, but there was no reply, except for the sounds of the waves on the beach. That was also quite calming in an unusual way, the gentle crashing sound of water on sand. He had been so stressed about Hulin's disappearance for the past 6 days. So why were you not so worried anymore? It was like somewhere, deep inside you, you knew everything was alright. You walked the rest of the way to the crackling fire and sat down on the cool sand, enjoying the cold underneath you and the warmth in front of you. The seagull looked absolutely delicious, cooked to a nice brown that made you want to ravish it. If it was all you, how on earth did you catch this bird? Looking at the rock ring of the fire, you noticed some of the clay pots had water in them. When you reached out to touch them, you discovered that they were hot, that they had just barely gotten done purifying. Polyp? A weak voice said quietly behind you. You jumped with a gasp and whirled around. Hulin stood about 10 feet away, carrying a couple of fruits in an elongated claw, excuse me. His legs kept shifting weight as if he was having a little trouble standing up. You stood up and immediately ran into his arms. Hulin! You cried as you crashed into his chest and wrapped your arms around his back. He stumbled slightly from the impact, but otherwise gripped back in a firm hug, dropping the fruits and crushing you into his chest. You sobbed uncontrollably into his chest as he shushed you and lightly rocked you back and forth. You cried out all the tears you had been holding back for the past week, soaking your cheeks and his chest with your tears. I thought you were dead. You were gone for so long. You took in a loud, shaky breath. I was so scared, Hulin. I thought you were gone forever. I thought you left me. You sobbed muffled words into his chest. Even though he seemed a little weak, he scooped your legs up on hand and supported your back with another as he lifted you up bridal style with little to no effort at all, and quickly knelt down so you were sitting on his lap. Paula, please don't cry, he pleaded while grabbing your chin softly and making you look into his black eyes. Everything's okay now. I would never, absolutely never leave you. I will always promise to come back to you. Excuse me, not always. I will always come back to you. I will always find you, he reassured and promised all at the same time. You still could not contain the cries that made your body shake and shudder. You could not hold back the searing tears that dripped down your face and onto his hand. You leaned into his torso again, pressing your face into his collarbone as he continued to hold onto you tighter than the abyss ever could, yet softer than the calm waves that crashed on the beach. He continued to rock you back and forth, shushing you and stroking a hand through your hair in an attempt to calm you down. Every now and then, he would brush the tears off of your face, too, getting bits of sand sticking to your cheeks and under your eyes. A sudden flash of rage coursed through your body, and you leaped from his grasp and stood up, looking down at him with a boiling glare. He looked up at you with shock that multiplied when you lashed out and struck him hard across the face. What the hell? His head snapping to the side, the slap ringing out loudly through the beach and even causing some nearby birds to take off in flight. Polyp? He started out in confusion, lifting a hand to hold where you had slapped him. You breathed in hot, deep breaths for a second before spilling. You absolute dumbass, you're dying! Bleeding out onto the sand, and I'm barely able to wake you up. Barely able to get you to shrink so you can heal inside my body. That's a little weird. And the first thing you do is heal a minor, insignificant cut of mine? He opened his mouth to reply, looking up at you in an almost scared-like manner, but you won't hear it. All the while, you have multiple puncture wounds on your back that are draining you all of your blood, and you waste precious energy on that. Energy you could have used to make yourself heal faster so I didn't have to worry myself to death these last few days. Ay. He suddenly jumped up and cradled both sides of your face in his hands, looking into your eyes deeper than a bottomless pit or an abyss. Polyp, you are and will always be my #1 priority, because you are the most important thing in this world to me. and I love you with all my heart," he said so softly that his words were almost lost in the gentle breeze. You went to smack him away, but he changed his grip from your face to your wrist, holding you gently. You continued to cry as you looked into each other's souls, it only being broken when he leaned forward to press little kisses all over your face. After that, he led you back to the fire and sat you down, grabbing 2 of the clay pots, bringing one to your lips so you could drink the warm water, while tilting the other one so it dripped down onto his hand. Once he got a little puddle, he started to wash your face. Once he cleaned you of your tears, he grabbed the roasting seagull from the fire, being careful not to burn himself, and gave it a good sniff. Deciding that it was good, you reached over and moved your hands over his so you could grab the stick that skewered your dinner. You're absolutely starving, and you did not realize before how hungry you were. You knew Hulun was probably just as hungry as you were, though, but that was because he was putting you first. That's not how you were gonna have things, though. So you ripped off a good-sized chunk and handed it over to him. He tentatively grabbed it and tried to hand feed you, but you ended up just taking it back and trying to hand feed him. He eventually caved and let you feed him. You kept tearing off chunks of the bird and feeding it to him until you got about halfway through the meat. He then took the bird from you, and the tides were turned. He started ripping off bits and feeding them to you. The dinner was silent, but there was no need for words. Your actions and eyes said more than your mouths ever could. When there was nothing but bones left, you took a long drink of some of the pots and moved to the fruit that you had dropped earlier. You ate those in silence, too. By the time you were done, it was now almost dark, with the sky being a very dark purple with just hints of pink. When you were done eating, you took another long drink again and looked into each other's eyes once more. With how dark it was now, it was a little harder to make out some of his facial details, but the warm fire let you see him. He was now looking at you with so much love that not even an ocean could hold it. I swear. He leaned over and touched his forehead to yours. You both closed your eyes and enjoyed the loving gesture. After a minute of hearing nothing but the sound of the fire, waves, and breathing, you opened your eyes again. He still had his closed, but instead of looking into his eyes, so instead of looking into his eyes, you just took in his face for a long, quiet moment, before you could not take it anymore and leaned in even more, almost a little aggressively, and gave him a big kiss. Okay, this is the warning. Warning! It gets a bit steamy ahead, so read it at your own risk. I don't get all the way into it, but still, if you don't want to read it, then this is the end of the chapter for you. Oh my god. Hold on, let me see. Let me see, guys. Okay, I think I can read this. Though it might be weird, guys. I might be like laughing myself to death. But I think we can read it, guys. Just for you, I'll read it. But I cannot guarantee it all read in seriousness. Okay. He opened his eyes wide with shock, but yours have closed again, so his drifted shut again after a second. You wrapped your arms around his neck, and he wrapped his arms around your waist. The two of you softly kissed for a while under the growing light of the stars. You didn't know how long. It could have been seconds. It could have been minutes. But time was lost to you right now. You had been so scared, so worried for a long time. You needed him right now, just as much as he needed you. So tonight you were all his, and he was all yours. Eventually, Eventually, he slipped his tongue into your mouth. Or was it your tongue in his? Again, you weren't sure. Your tongues lightly battled for dominance as you kissed. Eventually, you had to pull away to take a breath, but as soon as your lungs were full, you crashed right back into him and it was on again. The crash sent him onto his back, and you laid on his chest as the kissing started to get rougher and rougher by the minute. As things started to get more aggressive, he turned you over. Kill me now. He turned you over so that he was on top now, but you had found that your back was bare now, and your shirt was nowhere to be found. What? When did this go in, bitch? Along with your other pieces of clothing. Where they had gone? Where had they gone? When had you undressed? You didn't care. The only thing you cared about was the beast above you. After another minute, he broke away and breathed heavily on your neck. Why did you stop? You asked, breathing deeply as well. He looked up at you with slightly lost eyes. I don't want to rush you, Polyp, he said, and you quickly leaned back up for another kiss. You're not rushing anything, Hulan. I want this and so do you. I need you tonight. All of you. You whispered just a little bit huskily as you leaned in again and silenced any more attempts at conversation. However, you yourself broke that attempt just a couple minutes later. I love you, Hulan. You looked into his eyes and laid out your heart and soul for him to see. I love you too, Yan, he said. Then your lips were met again, and the world disappeared at you as you only knew and wanted each other. Honestly, it needs some work. Alright, y'all, we is in chapter 26. The white gas that burned him so. You were suddenly submerged in ice-cold water, the shock of it causing you to stiffen up and harden like stone. Your eyes flew open as sleep was rather ripped harshly from you. In reaction to the cold, you exhaled rather fast, and a spray of bubbles clouded your vision as they floated up to the surface. You quickly started flailing your arms to propel you to the surface. When you broke through the water, you took in a lungful of air and on instinct, and started coughing as the taste of salt water on your tongue choked you slightly. As you got your bearings and balanced in the water, kicking your legs to keep yourself above water, you reached your hands up to wipe at your eyes. How on earth had you gotten here? The last place you remembered that you were was on the mat Hulan and woven for you from grass. The two of you fell asleep on it after you had what. You froze again in mid-rub as your eyes got wide and your face got hot, even though you were in the cold water. Since you stopped kicking, you sunk back under the surface for a second, but you quickly started kicking your legs again. You took another deep breath as you broke the surface of the water. Your ears were suddenly filled with a light-hearted giggling sound. You whipped around to the direction it was coming from and learned that you were right in front of the beach in a deep spot. Hulan crouched up in the sandy hill that loomed over you. He was giggling like a toddler. You overlaughed at everything, giving out a couple of accidental snorts every now and then. He had his eyes scrunched shut and his shoulders bounced with how hard he chuckled at your form. Did he toss you in the water to wake you up? Hulan, you jerk! Did you throw me in here? You asked in a loud voice, a bit agitated, but also a bit amused at the same time. He stopped chuckling, but he still held a large smile as he leaned even more off of the small cliff to look at you with big, bright eyes that for some reason looked as if they were reflecting more light than usual. You would not wake up when I made you breakfast, Polyp. So I let you sleep in the middle of the day, and I tried to wake you up for lunch, and you still would not wake up. So now it is afternoon, and it is time for you to wake up, sunshine. He yelled the last part into the air as he dove off the cliff, and practically landed right on top of you. You cried out as he gripped you and dragged you under the water again, bear hugging you and squeezing you tight as the cold water chilled you. You felt the vibration of the thud through his body as he sunk to the sandy seafloor with you, still tight in his grip. He buried his face lovingly into the crick of your neck, and you stayed still while gripping onto his arms a bit tighter. I think I misread that. Your eyes were still not being bothered by the salt water, though your vision was still very blurry. You saw that you could out of the blue water and the white sand. Also, the long black strands of Hulan's hair as it floated up in the water. You had been underwater for a couple of minutes now and still have yet to feel the urge to breathe in. Your lungs weren't tight in any way, and you felt like you would have been if you were breathing the whole time, even though you were not. It was also slow to hit you that you were still completely naked from the night before. Also, Hulin was too, apparently, and you choked on a big wad of bubbles. Now that you felt the need to breathe in, though it was not urgent, as if you would pass out soon if you did not. With his grip still firm but soft of you, Hulin kicked his legs to slowly ascend you out of the water and back over to the dry sand on the beach. When the two of you swam up from the water, you take in another deep breath for the third time in 10 minutes. You felt the sand under the waves squish under your feet as you stepped out of the water and onto the beach. There was already a fire going, and you quickly made your way over to it as you also spotted your clothes nearby it as well. The dry sand stuck to your feet and legs as you kicked up in your hurried attempt to get to the fire. You knelt down to pick up your clothing when it was playfully snatched away by Hulin, who leaped over the fire and faced you while holding your clothes out. Don't bother with these right now, Polyp. Enjoy the feel of sand on your skin, he said as he was apparently in a real giddy mood with his morning afternoon apparently. You folded your arms across your chest and looked at him with a raised eyebrow. Hulin, I'm going to feel the sand on my skin either way, but I would rather it not stick to me. Plus I'm cold, thanks to you. You narrowed your eyes playfully at him when he looked down in a bashful manner, holding out your clothes for you while being careful not to drop them in the fire. You quickly took them from his grasp and shook the sand off of them, hurriedly slipping into them so you would not be cold anymore, or naked for the matter. You were pretty embarrassed from it. You sat down in the sand and held your hands to the fire to help warm them up. Hulin walked around the fire again and behind you before sitting down too, pulling your back to his chest while he rested his chin on top of your head. You're in a really good mood today, he commented to him while the two of you warmed up. He shifted a little before answering. I had the best night of my life last night, he replied. You yourself shifted in return. Because of what we did? You asked shyly. Because you finally started loving me, was his response. You struggled out of his hold and turned your torso around so you could look at him in the eyes. We've kissed before, Hulin, you said, looking at his face as he lost his giddy smile that turned into a serious but calm expression. Yes, we have, but when you kissed me, when I gave you your leg back, it was not because you loved me. It was more of a thank you for getting your leg back. But when you kissed me last night and kept kissing me again and again, it was because you loved me. When I stopped because I was scared, you kissed me again because you loved me, he said, while his eyes glistened with moisture, not from the water you were just in. And I told you I loved you, you said, leaning over, giving him a kiss on the bridge of his nose. He closed his eyes and leaned slightly more into your lips. Your foreheads were now touching in a loving embrace. It's just shocking, my guy. He opened his eyes, and the two of you were now looking into each other's souls again. That was until the moment was broken between you and when he raised his face to the air. What? Sniffing it as he stiffened up slightly. You tensed up a little too, knowing when he sniffed and tensed like that, it was not good. Hulin, what is it? There was a pause as he continued to smell the air. Is it blue eyes? He said, getting afraid now. Had the monster terrorized you a week ago here again? The monster tried to drag you back into the abyss for unknown reasons to you. Did it come back healed like Hulin to finish what it started? Was there going to be another big fight? You could not take Hulin being so hurt again if Blue Eyes had come back to kill Hulin. Even though there was no doubt in your mind that Blue Eyes would be able to kill Hulin, you did not want an experience like that last week to happen all over again. Excuse me. Hulin stood up, which forced you to stand up as well. Small growls coming with his sniff filled the air. You were about to ask him another question when a small, round, metallic object that looked like a grenade was tossed into the sand about 8 feet away from the two of you. It burst a second later and covered you and Hulin with a white gas that smelled like sulfur. For a second you thought it was some type of cover gas until you heard the thud and a blood-curdling monster-like shriek that came from Hulin. You spun around to face him. So fast you almost toppled over. He had fallen to the sand and was now being curled up as whatever the white gas was burned and blistered his skin like he was in a big boiling pot. Hulin! You screamed as you knelt down next to him, grabbing onto his arms and trying to drag him out of the white cloud. The smell stung your nose a bit, but did not really do much else other than water your eyes when they started to burn slightly. He thrashed around slightly as whatever this gas was eating his skin, and large portions of his body started to bleed as the raw muscle underneath was exposed to the gas. Oh shit, that's not good. And started to bubble up as well. You dragged him from the white cloud, crying as you watched his limp form twitch in agony. You screamed again as 2 pairs of strong gloved hands grabbed you by the arms and started to drag you away from Hulin. You twisted your head around to find what it looked like army men wearing black helmets that concealed their faces. You heard Hulin roar in a mix of pain and anger as he struggled to stand on shaky limbs before charging over to you on all fours, growing bigger and more battle-like as he ran. She's mine! The voice of a possessive demon that you had heard many times before ripped from his throat as he charged at the men holding you. One of them reached into a bag on his side and pulled out another one of those grenade things before aiming at it and simply dropping it to the ground. Right as Hulin reached you, it exploded right in his face, and the area was filled with the same white gas. It immediately started to eat him alive again. You screamed at the men to let you go and struggled and thrashed as they once again started to drag you away from Hulin and into the jungle. Oh crap. Into the jungle. Your tears blurred your vision as you fought as best as you could. But these men had an iron grasp on you as they took you away. You could only see Hulin's shape as he squirmed and screamed in the white fog. Before the vessel he was in went limp, the true body of Hulin started to slip out of it. That was all you saw as men dragged you away fast, and you were hit with a dreading deja vu from blue eyes dragging you away in the same direction these men were. When you got to the other side of the island, you saw a big black helicopter in the sand with more armed men around it. When had this gotten here? You would have heard it, and Hulin would have too, unless they landed when you were under the water. That would explain why you and Hulin did not hear it. Get her in! One of the men spoke in a muffled voice as you were dragged into the helicopter as it started up. The other men climbing in as well. You struggled and yelled at them to let you go as you cried for Hulin. Was he okay? The sound of the helicopter blades defined all other sounds, and the air from them chilled you to the bone as it lifted off the ground and took off into the sky, the armed men holding you firmly in place. You cried even harder as you saw the blood that coated your hands. Jesus Christ, this took the turn for the worse, I'll tell you what. Alright guys, I believe this is chapter 27, A Strange Place. You kicked and scratched at the men who held you in the helicopter, but it was no use. The armor they wore was thick and nothing you did got through it. And even if you did, there was still problems. There were about 5 men in total in the helicopter, including the one holding you. So even if you got away from him, there were 4 others to take his place. The final problem was, even if you did get away, you were already too far off the ground to jump out. If you did, the impact of hitting the ground or the water would kill you. One of the men said something into some kind of headset that you could not make it out, and the crackling from the other voice from the device answered him. You looked down to the island below you and tried to see if you could make out anything that might be Hulin, but there were tears blocking your vision, the arms being held down, so you could only blink them away as best as you could. There were no signs of Hulin on the island, but there was a big long cylinder oval-like shape in the water. You have seen submarines before, so you knew what it was. You could only guess the people inside were the ones the man with the headset was talking to. You could not make out what he was saying over the sound of the helicopter blades and your own sobbing. But after a minute, you did hear the crackling again. You could not tell what the voice was saying, but you could tell whatever he was saying, he was shouting in a panicked way. You looked down back at the water where the submarine was, just as the underwater vessel shot torpedoes out of its side and into one much larger, bulkier shadow that was surging toward it under the water. Joy filled you when you saw him. Now you knew he was okay and not bleeding out again or something of the like. However, he kept heading straight towards the ship, ignoring the missiles that sped at him. So you did not know if his skin was hard enough to stand the blows. You cried for Lynn to swim away from them, but you knew there was no way he heard you in any way, shape, or form, even if he seemed to avoid them somehow, because they went right over his dark form. The radio went wild again right before the shadow grabbed the submarine in long tendrils around the face, and the whole thing exploded. Metal, water, and bodies flew everywhere as the bright orange light boomed under the water, covering both the shadow of the beast and the ship. It was at that moment when the helicopter reeled in a different direction and took off in the air at almost breakneck speed. You could not look around to see if Hulu was following you because you were going too fast. You could only hunch onto yourself and hope that Hulu would catch up and take you back. He didn't. It was night by the time the helicopter finally got to its destination. It was above water military/science base. You could see that there were multiple levels, both above and below the surface. Yours was only singular building, and the whole thing was underwater. Men in military uniforms swarmed the whole upper level that was above water. The helicopter straightened itself out before carefully setting down on the landing pad. The blades were slowing down with a soft swirling sound until they stopped moving completely. After it was off, the men grabbed you and led you across the landing area and onto the other building. They were moving you too fast for you to really make out what everything looked like inside. It was bright, kind of how your base was too, but it was more army-like. But more army-like was what came to your mind with what you saw. You were led into a bright blue room with a big, angry-looking female wearing a doctor's coat came in. Lord, I swear to God. She had a dishwasher blonde hair that was tied back into a bun on the top of her head. She was pulling on some gloves and looking at you with her light amber brown eyes. She barely glanced at you before she turned to slip gloves on. She needed a shower. Stripper, was all she said before you could protest that the armed men started removing all off your clothing. As nice as a fresh shower sounded, you still absolutely freaked out. These were strange people in a strange place, and you had no idea where Hulin was and if he was okay. You struggled as they took your shirt, then your pants, then pushed you into a smaller room that joined with a bright blue one. The room was cold, and you huddled against yourself for warmth. A white powder was sprayed onto you, and you groaned when something landed in your eyes, stinging them. The white powder brought with it was a really strong smell of soap. After the powder, the water heads along the wall pumped up and started pouring lukewarm water over onto your form. It was then that two more people dressed in plastic suits came in. One had brushed, and the other grabbed you, holding you still while the other one scrubbed your shivering body. The way this is probably illegal. When your body was clean, they moved to your hair. That was when they paid special attention to your eyes, making sure that they were thoroughly rinsed out. As you were cleaned, you were dried and brought comfortable-looking white pajama clothing. It was comfortable to be wearing new clothes. Those others you were wearing had been on you for too long. On the beach, you had been able to wash them with fresh water and let them dry in the sun. Of course, you usually did that when Hulin was looking for fish in the sea. You would wash yourself too when he was gone. Granted, it felt nice to be truly cleaned with soap again. Even if you disliked the whole situation, being clean helped relieve some of the stress that you were holding. Once you were in clothes, You were led into the blue room again where the doctor was waiting for you, looking as if someone spit in her breakfast. She examined your body, looking for something you were not sure of. Once again, meeting your eyes were paid special attention too, as she shined her small light into them. She pressed her lips into a thin line and clicked her light off, turning around and grabbing her clipboard to write something down. With her back turned to you, did not really see what she wrote down. The only thing you caught as she turned around again was eyes dilate rather than constrict. She went to her cabinets and grabbed a blue liquid in a spout container. She dropped some into your eyes, which immediately started to burn. You brought your hands up to your eyes and you cried out a little. Hands grabbed you again and led you out of the room. You did not know where you were going this time because you were walking blind. The hands would push or pull you in whatever direction they wanted you to go. Eventually there was a squeak on a metal door opening. You were brought into another room and sat down on something soft. The footsteps walked away and the door shut again with a high-pitched scraping sound. You rubbed your eyes once more before blinking up at the room you were in. It took a moment for your eyes to focus, but they weren't burning as much anymore. When they finally got back into focus, you noticed that you were not alone in the room. There were 3 other people all sitting on beds like you were. You two were sitting on the same bed with each other, while another sat on a bed across from them, looking at you with a mix of shock and compassion. There were 2 women and 1 man. One of the ladies was a middle-aged Indian woman who was sitting on one of the beds with a much older African woman whose body shook with her age. The man sitting across from them was a Japanese man who looked in his early 20s. He had a pair of spectacles on and was looking at you with sadness. "Who are you?" you asked. Anyways, guys, I am so sorry I left y'all guys on a cliffhanger. If I did continue reading, I would sound like absolute crap right now. But I hope you guys did enjoy it. What do you guys think is going to happen next? And who do you think kidnapped us? And why did they kidnap us, per se? Even though Hulum was the original one who kidnapped us. You know, who re-kidnapped us or something like that. Let me know in the comments down below. And who are the people that we're about to meet? Do you think they're good, bad, or we're in a similar or the same situation like us? Let me know in the comments down below. Hopefully the votes will be like starting to come out hopefully before December. I will try my utter best. I'm still looking for that dang document with all the freaking old but good recommended stories. Because I want to get more stories on here and keep you guys more entertained. Anyways, trying to cut this short. I hope you guys did enjoy this, though. Like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more amazing videos, guys. Hopefully I get a little bit more better so I can start reading more stuff to you guys. But votes will be out soon, hopefully. But sadly, I gotta go, guys. So I shall see you on the next video. Bye and peace.